Hello and welcome to Jackson's PLP podcast, where I've previously covered World War II, the Civil Rights Movement in Vancouver's Chinatown, but today the focus is on one of this week's top news stories, the release of O.J. Simpson. That's right, the juice is loose once again, and he was released from his Las Vegas prison cell in the early hours of October 1st after serving only 9 years of his 33-year sentence for armed robbery and kidnapping. O.J. is said to have spent most of his time in prison watching football and eating junk food. But prior to his release, O.J. is quoted saying that he wanted to eliminate a lot of these things from his life, getting back to the simple quality things that he took for granted before his time in prison. Things such as steak, golf, and dinner with his children. Upon his release, he was spotted supporting this claim at a local McDonald's, ordering his first meal as a free man. Though it is not suspected to be an endorsement deal, I think McDouble Jeopardy with cheese has a nice ring. McDonald's does have a history of working with famous athletes, such as Michael Jordan during the 90s and Michael Phelps just last year. It leads me to wonder if they have been working on something with O.J. He might owe McDonald's, seeing as his sodium-filled diet could have been the reason the joints in his hands were too swollen to fit into his gloves those years ago. This would explain the new slogan for the National Society of Nutrition: if the glove no longer fits, maybe it's time to quit. Now to get to the fact that by attending this McDonald's, O.J. has already went back on his promise to break his prison habits. But I can't say I'm surprised, considering after 9 years in prison, he's quoted saying, he really hasn't changed. That's already one contradiction within hours of his release. A rate of contradiction not seen since his murder trial back in the 90s. And how did this guy only serve 9 years, less than one-third of his sentence? This man forcibly entered a person's hotel room, robbed him with the aid of a deadly weapon, then proceeded to kidnap him. And he was actually found guilty this time on all charges. To serve only 9 years of his 33-year sentence is ridiculous to me. 9 years is what you can receive for publicly inciting fear, something O.J. is probably guilty of just from his late-night visit to McDonald's. I mean, can you imagine being tired from a late night of partying on the Vegas Strip? You stop at McDonald's just to see O.J. Simpson in the booth next to you, there to try the new Big Mac? I don't know about you, but I'd be pretty terrified to see one of the most notorious murderers in American history. Which I guess leads me to the question, does O.J. still have anyone who isn't afraid of him? Does he still have any supporters? The story of O.J. has always been a very complicated one. I mean, during the murder trial, America was divided into two groups, those who believed in his innocence and those who believed he was guilty. In many places this translated to black people supporting him, with white people opposing. This was due to the clear prejudice in the legal system that existed at the time. The black people of America clearly wanted to combat this issue. But as more and more evidence came forward, those who initially supported O.J. then regretted choosing his case to rally behind. Could be like telling an aspiring athlete to look up Michael Phelps as a role model, only to find out he has a $1 million endorsement deal with McDonald's. When O.J.'s long-anticipated judgment finally passed and he was found not guilty, he was widely hated, and it went from one group that supported him and one that didn't, to one group that didn't support him, and one group being O.J. Fast forward to his release this year, people are now saying, can we please stop talking about O.J.? Which I find quite funny because it's the same way O.J. used to dismiss race, like in his famous line, "I'm not black, I'm O.J.," that sparked so much hatred towards him in the first place. Personally, I think we need to keep talking about these issues. To quote O.J.'s attorney, no, we can't just sweep it under the rug. O.J., getting off 14 years early just last Sunday, is proof that the justice system has not fixed itself since his last trial. Money and influence are enough to rid the beholder's actions of consequence in America. And the most comical thing of all is that there are teenagers who sit in prison based on false convictions, while all the money for rehabilitation goes to a man like O.J. Simpson, who's already cost the government $10 million for his trial, and who still hasn't paid the $30 million he lost in his civil case. But the other crazy thing is that it would still cost $10,000 in taxpayer money to support him for each remaining year he has in prison anyway. I'm not saying I have a solution, but if O.J. were killed, Los Angeles would definitely be the place, since it's been legal since October 3rd, 1995. That is, for those with a net worth of over $20 million. Thank you so much for listening. Of course, this podcast is possible because of listeners like you, but also make sure to tune in to NBC this week and catch the latest episode of How to Get Away with Murder featuring Viola Davis.